Will Ospreay against Kyle Fletcher. What did you think about the placement of this match? This was kind of right in the middle of the pay-per-view.
I thought it was perfectly fine in that there really is no great spot to put a match like this other than the very last match on the show, and this was not going to main event this show. Anything that was going to follow this was going to suffer somehow, so might as well maybe put it in the middle so that it would have enough of a buffer before the main event.
So we had some interesting costuming choices. We had Kyle Fletcher out in white with a crown that he is wearing, as they explained, to become a king, you have to kill a king. And then Ospreay is out in his Punisher-themed outfit as well, going to the dark side for tonight's match.
Yeah, I guess more of an anti-hero, yeah.
All right. Well, we began. Don Callis is on commentary, and the bell rings, and they just go right at it, which, for a big grudge match, that's how these should start. And then everyone can see all the tape on Ospreay's neck, and that does become Kyle's target, and he ends up hitting a DDT on Ospreay's bad neck and just attacks him with strikes and hits a brain buster on the floor. But there would be much more where that would come from. And moments later, Ospreay is recovered, and he goes for a handspring off the rope, and his arm gives out due to the numbness that he is experiencing. Now, I don't have a lengthy list of the best wrestlers to sell numbness in their limbs, but Will Ospreay was incredible in this match.
I want a top 10 tomorrow, okay? Top 10 numbness
best
sells.
Best convincing nerve damage that wrestlers have sold. Like maybe Ishii is on that list, I would say. But I thought Ospreay, in terms of conveying, like all from that promo about sitting with his son and not being able to feel him holding his hand, like that all played into this match. And some of the things like you just had to be watching for. And I don't think there's many people better than Nigel at picking up on those things, because sometimes you can be too subtle, and that stuff, a very small percentage might catch it, but others are going to miss it, and you kind of do need that person to guide you along. So so he goes down from this, and Fletcher gains control, but Ospreay comes back, lands a sky twister press, which sometimes the arm, it comes and goes. You know what I mean? You
don't need an arm for that.
As long as you got your legs underneath you, you're good. And then Ospreay places his hands behind his back in the ring to take chops from Fletcher, and Fletcher winds up and instead he super kicks him, and it was a great spot where he just like goaded Ospreay, and you think he's going for a chop, and it just came out of nowhere. The timing was really well done on that. Ospreay manages a stun dog and then goes to skin the cat and catches Kyle with a head scissors, and he's going to pull him over the top rope into a tombstone, but kind of loses him, so they have to reposition on the floor and then hit the tombstone. So they continue on. Kyle ducks a hidden blade, and we get all these cool counters, ending with a Spanish fly by Ospreay. Goes for the hidden blade, but it's cut off by an Fletcher lariat, but Ospreay fires out of the corner, hits the hidden blade. Both men are down, and this crowd, they're on their feet reacting to this. And we see Ospreay manage a Styles clash, hits the hidden blade. Kyle kicks out, and Ospreay starts drilling him with closed fists to the back of the head like he was Michael Chandler last weekend. Then we had the steel steps that had been set up on the floor from the beginning of the match, and they're just sitting there, and they fight on the edge of the apron. Fletcher counters Ospreay and turns it into a tombstone, coming off the apron onto the steps as Will goes down, but Fletcher refuses to win.
I fucking gasped. You should have heard like my voice. I went like soprano, dude. Like my wife was like, "What happened?" I lost it. This was like the way more devastating than any Tiger Driver they've done, other than the first Kenny one. Like this is the type of spot that should take somebody out of action for a year. Like it was nuts, and it wasn't even.
It's a good thing that Kevin Owens loved Randy.
Yes, because if he hated them, he would have done a tombstone off the apron.
This is what's steps. Reserved for hatred. It was like the real big spot of the match. But I really enjoyed like Kyle. He's grabbing Will, and the camera's in on him as he won't accept a count out because he knows that that's a way that Will won't be able to accept that I am better than you. He wants to pin Ospreay and rolls him into the ring and hits the grimstone, which is his pile driver. But the best part of this move was as he's going to hit this pile driver, Ospreay's left arm is just flailing. And it's just like this little subtlety that they mentioned here. And I just thought both of these guys were incredible in this match, but some of this selling was tremendous.
So I thought the Tombstone was going to be the big spot of the match. This Grimstone, like, it was essentially a gonzo bomb. Mm-hmm. And it was about as, like, convincingly done as I think you'll ever see something like that. You know, like the Tiger drivers. The Kenny one looked very vicious, almost too vicious for people's comforts. The subsequent ones they've done have looked very protected, and ultimately I'm happier for it. But it does sometimes get in the way of the type of storytelling that they're trying to tell. Same with this Kevin Owens, Randy Orton one. Very obviously, you know, Orton didn't seem to be hurt. Both of these spots that they did here with the Tombstone off the steps and then this Gonzo bomb, man, I don't know how he could have taken it any better. And I mean, obviously he's okay, so I feel comfortable enough about it. But man, like they did both of them like really, really well.
Yeah, it was almost like what they're going to escalate this match to, because this Grimstone was like this would have been a great finish. It really does tie into the whole like neck damage and such. But they were going to up the ante here, and Fletcher picks him up after this kick out and he teases the Tiger driver, but Ospreay counters, but he can't manage to go for the hidden blade because he throws like, you know how people have often said it was like that, you know, some wrestlers, it was like in their prime, like, could you send a Bret Hart out there to have a bad match? And it was like, that might be really challenging to do for someone to just go out there and be bad. And Ospreay has to throw these strikes that have to like basically look like he has no power in his left arm. And he's just they were so goddamn perfect. I mean, they were perfect for what they needed to be. I was just in awe of that. I thought this was like so well constructed here. And then Fletcher takes these weak left shots and snaps the arm, hits a running kick to the neck, and then catches Ospreay in his arms like he's about to fall to his death. But he has one more plunge to go, and that is the brainbuster on the top turnbuckle, which he executes to Will and pins him in 24 minutes and 15 seconds, marking Will's third singles loss in AEW, and has actually, looking at this, Will Ospreay is now 0-4 with a no contest over the last 2 months. The man has not won a match since September.
Right. And I don't think that's hurt his perception at all. Like, at some point it will, you know, at some point, like, he definitely needs to maybe rack up wins, but he doesn't seem to be in title contention right now. Like, that story is being taken up by Jon Moxley and others. So why not have him
should be the star of this Continental Classic. However, watching the end of this match,
Kyle Fletcher might be.
Well, I'm like, if you're putting Will in the Continental Classic, it's like, is he winning this thing? And if not, are you going to do like an injury angle here? Because I think everyone is expecting like this to be the tour de force of Will Ospreay to end this year, is this Continental Classic. But you are doing like this level of a neck injury.
Yeah.
And this tournament starts this week.
Well, I think it's a perfect handicap for him to have throughout the Continental Classics so that you can continue having him not deliver the best performances. Will Ospreay, to me, at this point in his career, isn't necessarily the type of guy who needs to be protected by wins. Like, he's injured, you know? Like, when it's time to really ramp him up for, like, a title contention, I think you can, like, give him that dominant run then. But he's getting over simply based off of the wrestling alone and his performances and the great storytelling. And you can lose and still be a great storyteller. So I don't necessarily think he needs to win the Continental Classic. It might actually open up more interesting opportunities if he actually loses and doesn't win tragically, for instance. Getting back to the match, this was easily one of the best matches of the year. And as high of a bar as Will Ospreay has set for himself on pay-per-view, I thought this match took it even one step further. And that's because of his dance partner and the incredible performance of Kyle Fletcher, who, man, this guy has just shown himself to be just amazing. Certainly in contention.
He's probably been the breakout performer of this year. In
like,
terms
would you
of,
say
like,
leading candidate for most improved?
I
And most
like in
improved.
terms of somebody that was already like at a very good level at the start of this year, but like I don't, as I've said before, I don't think if you go back to the beginning of this year and you were to look up and down this roster and say who could be a viable like contender to become like a main player, nobody's isolating Kyle Fletcher if you were given like 10 choices of people to be elevated this year. I just don't think anyone was looking at that, and this guy has surpassed so many other candidates in this role to have a phenomenal 2025. And the fact that they opted to go with him in this match, like this was this was a real solidification of Kyle Fletcher and where they see this guy. Like this guy was like on Ring of Honor like at the beginning of this year.
Yeah, and even then, like we saw him live at that Supercard show. Like he was already showing glimpses of it. But
I came away from that press conference and the match he had like that night. That to me was my eye-opening experience of Kyle Fletcher as something a lot bigger than I think people had seen him in his role.
I thought he was going to have a strong 2024. After a match like this and a performance like this, it escalates him to like us talking about him being a champion within the next 12 months, world champion within the next 12 months. That's how like strong of a performance this was. In this match, he kept pace with the best wrestler in the world. And to me, it wasn't even just the wrestling. I thought his heel presence was excellent. Good slow pacing when he needed to be slow. Great facial expressions and confidence when he needed to exude it. Great, like, maniacal yelling into Ospreay's ear. Like that little tiny stuff was great. In the match itself, like, I don't think you could have asked for a better performance from both of them. Even little details like how close that hidden blade looked. It couldn't have been closer to how close he ducked it, and not to mention the great looking executions of those head dropping moves. We continue to be concerned about maybe that bar being risen too high, but for a storytelling match like this, I'm cool with it. It gave you a very satisfying conclusion to the next story told throughout the match. I was almost a little annoyed that they didn't go to a finish sooner after both of those head drops, but knowing that they were doing it to build to Kyle Fletcher's brainbuster to finish it, which is a frequent move of his, it is the best way that you could promote that move as you can to tell the audience that this is the one that is even more dangerous than the Gonzo bomb or the Tombstone on the steps. So just what a great way to just push this Kyle Fletcher into like the next level in all of this.
Yeah. I think everyone is going to be looking at sort of the longer term view of like the Moxley story and when a Ospreay gets involved in that. Like I'm with you. I think when you're ready to put Ospreay into that position, like that is going to be kind of your big title chase program that you want to peak for the right time. I would not want to get into the habit of just presenting him as sort of a also ran in this, because I think the audience is pretty hot for Will Ospreay, and I think you really have to do a lot to kind of shake that belief in Ospreay as that star. At the same time, like you don't want to miss the boat on something when you have it at the same time. But
I don't think that's in any danger at all. Like I would argue that he's hotter now than, or just as hot at the very least as when he entered the company. And it's through, like in AEW, you're not necessarily just promoted from your wins and losses. You're promoted by a word of mouth coming off of like, even though he lost in storyline, he is winning the audience perception of how great of a pro wrestler he is. He's probably winning Wrestler of the Year on many lists. And I think that's almost even more important sometimes than the booking.
It's a very vital part for AEW's identity, but we're also talking at a time where being able to promise that you're getting a match of the year every single month with this guy is not making that difference with your fan base. Like the people that are buying these shows are coming away super satisfied.
Are you arguing that Fletcher versus Ospreay didn't contribute to the buys on the show? Because I would disagree. I think it, for me at least, like it was a best built program heading into the pay-per-view, and the match I was looking forward to the most heading to the pay-per-view.
I think it was the best promoted match on the show. I would agree with that. It's hard to say if that was a difference maker for people.
This was a bigger difference maker for me than Moxley and Cassidy, for me personally.
Okay, well, there probably were people that bought the show for this match. Like, it was a really well promoted match, and I think you could look at every month, like Ospreay has a big match. This one had the added appeal, I think, of like a really well done story on top of it. And I mean, he's been involved in some great stories this year too, beyond just producing the big match at the end.
His well-roundedness is really, really incredible. And we haven't been able to see that since until he showed up in AEW, where he's had a chance to tell stories and talk. He's good at all those things. He's good at wrestling. He's good at selling. He's good at cutting promos. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
And then Mark Davis was out to check on Ospreay as Callis left with Fletcher. But the match of the show, I will think we will both declare at this point of the show.
I thought it was one of the matches of the year. Yeah.
If you like this video, consider joining our Patreon, the Post Wrestling Cafe. Multiple bonus podcasts every week, ad-free shows, and access to our full archive. Otherwise, a like and subscribe is much appreciated. Thank you for watching.